Hello, Nancy.
Michelle, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay, something was going goofy.
Hey, I know all about Goofy. My MacBook is acting up and it's over on
Uh-oh.
the dining room table, I don't know, talking to Apple or something. I don't know what it's doing. It's just,
Well,
I don't like computer problems.
me either.
They're so frustrating.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, I can't open my mail on my MacBook. So it's like, well, that's a problem.
Yeah. Definitely. Well,
Yeah.
I hope everybody shows that says they were going to show.
I hope so too.
Hey, John.
We haven't seen you in a while, John. It's nice to see you again. Where have you been hiding?
Oh, I don't know. I have a lot of hope. I guess we had Christmas and then we got real busy again here, but then we kind of missed out on some of our UDC steering committee meetings, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Brooke came back for a while, Of course, we're missing Wade, but he's gone. So, have you found a replacement for him yet?
No, we have not. We're
Oh.
still working on that.
Okay. Well, that probably makes life a little busier for you and Brooke and everybody else down there.
Yes, Brooke and I are dividing up Wade's tasks.
Well, and I see a lot of construction going on, so I bet you're very, very busy.
Mm-hmm.
We need more people, Nancy.
I agree. They said they were going to be here.
I just came from Pilates down at the Malley Center, and we normally have about 6 people in the class on Wednesday evenings, and there was only 3 of us. So I don't know. Maybe everybody's just staying home and staying warm. I don't know.
And Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to the rec center for water aerobics. And I didn't go last night. I didn't want to leave.
Well, it's a little different when you're coming out of a pool with wet hair. That I can understand. So
Yeah, bit much.
yeah.
But I'm going to go tomorrow night. And I sure like having these meetings on Wednesday. Because then I'm not rushing back. And my hair is usually still wet.
Yeah, well, I've still got my T-shirt on from Pilates, so you'll just have to take me as I am. That's all.
Okay, I'm still waiting for Kate Fuller and Meg.
Okay.
Good evening, Carl and Aaron.
There we go. I finally got in.
Hey, Carl.
Hello, Carl.
Oh,
Yeah, you were talking about the cold weather. It's hopefully it'll be gone in a couple days.
Supposed to be in the 50s on Sunday, 40s on Saturday. So it's
Hey,
a big improvement from now.
My wife called a friend in Montana and she said, our weather's really cold here. And the lady in Montana said, yeah, their weather was cold too. As this morning was minus 33.
Ooh. Is that the wind with the
Oh,
wind
yeah.
chill?
No, I don't
Oh,
think so.
Montana.
I think the East Coast is the only part of the country that does wind chill. We're starting to do that though, actually.
yeah. There's Kate. And there's Meg.
Okay, I believe everyone is here.
Okay. Terrific. All right. Thank you all for coming. I know we've had a little, we almost didn't have a quorum, so I appreciate everybody that is here and could come. I'll call this the Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning meeting to order. Nancy, could you call the roll, please?
Sure. Kate Townley is absent. Meg Donaldson.
Here.
Colin Haggerty is absent. Judy Brown is absent. Kate Fuller.
Here.
Noel Atkins is absent. Carl Adams.
Here,
Brenda Hubka.
Here,
Aaron Martinez.
Here.
And Chair Austin.
Here. All right, the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the February 8th, 2022 minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Last
Second.
meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, could you call for the vote on the approval of the minutes, please?
Sure. Meg.
Abstain.
Kate.
Yes.
Carl.
yes,
Brenda.
Yes,
Aaron.
Yes.
And Chair Austin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the findings of fact for the case ZON 2021-003, 3600 South Gallapago Street. Do I hear a motion to approve the findings of fact?
I'll make a motion to approve the findings of fact for 3600 South Gallapago.
Thank you. Second? I'll second it. That's fine. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, would you call for a vote on the findings of fact?
Meg.
I have to abstain from this one too.
Okay. Kate.
Yes.
Carl.
yes,
Brenda.
Yes,
Aaron.
Yes.
And Chair Austin.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Nancy, I think the next thing on the agenda is the public forum. Do we have any public online with us?
We do not.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and skip to the public hearing of case 2021-07, the walk and wheel update. And I believe I am to call upon John.
First, we need a motion to open the public
Oh.
hearing.
Of course, yes. Please, a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I move to open the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I have Kate Fuller as the second. Meg Donaldson,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Carl,
What was this for? I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. It's a motion to open the public
Oh, the
hearing.
open hearing, okay. Yes.
Thank you. Brenda,
Yes,
Aaron,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, now I can call on John.
Okay, if you'll raise your right hand, John, do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I do.
Thank you.
This is John Voberil, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. I am here this evening and have the privilege to present to you case number 2021-07, the Walk and Wheel update. Publication, proof of publication for this public hearing was published on the city's website beginning February 10th and going through till today. At this time, I will share my screen to give you the PowerPoint presentation. Here it is. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So I think I will start out and give you just a little bit of background beyond even this little blurb here. I've been kind of giving this presentation to a number of different community groups. And so I think some of this information that I will provide to you this evening will be helpful and that you'll enjoy hearing about it. But so I've been with the city since 2001. And shortly after that time, I found out, I kind of learned about the city and what kind of bicycle planning it had in the past. And at that time, in the 70s, the city established 2 different bicycle routes, one east-west on Dartmouth connecting Denver on either side, and a north-south route connecting from Sherman and Yale, and then making its way to the west over to Windermere and then down to downtown Littleton. And that was about the extent of planning for on-street bicycle facilities since the 1970s. And so I reached out to someone in Public Works, and someone who was a bicycle enthusiast, and we got permission to work on a new bicycle master plan for the city. We did it by ourselves in-house, and we approved that in 2004. However, we didn't really have any money to do anything. It was more of just kind of a policy document until we had an opportunity to sign all of our bicycle routes through a grant that was made available during the Great Recession in 2012. And at that time, I realized, oh no, I need a new plan. We've implemented our plan. We need a new one. And so I went out and was able to find this $100,000 grant with no strings attached and no match from the Kaiser Permanente Foundation. And we were able to use that to hire a professional bicycle and pedestrian planning consultant. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended council approval after holding a public hearing on September, what was that date? September 22nd, 2015. It was approved by City Council in the fall of 2015. And the Walk and Wheel plan had emphasized a series of quick win projects, about maybe 8 to 10 or so projects. Typically from that time on were funded out of discretionary departmental or grant dollars that we had available that we weren't earmarked for some other project. I was able to find these little remainder pots of money and go out and have a consultant design a facility for $10,000 to $20,000, and then it would be ready to. Then we'd have to look for other additional funds within public works budgets, or I'd have to go out and get a grant to do them. However, recently council has moved to dedicate a capital improvements funding funding stream that's dedicated exclusively to walk and wheel projects. And that's kind of necessitated this need for doing a walk and wheel update because the city manager didn't have a real good handle on what the cost of these facilities would be. And those were not estimated in the original walk and wheel plan. That was something that was really causing some problems about how we were going to program that money moving forward. So we got our marching orders to do an update of the walk and wheel plan. And the new walk and wheel update includes project goals. It included a new round of outreach to the community. It identifies our existing conditions, looks at some of the projects that we have been able to implement since 2015. And then it goes through an analysis of all the outstanding projects. It also has developed cost estimates for all those projects. It also describes the facility types that we were looking at. And finally, it offers a suggested recommended program. So our project goals are to identify and summarize our successful projects to date, analyze, screen, and prioritize outstanding projects. However, just a caveat, these walk and wheel projects, they do not include rail trail bridges or trail segments that are programmed as separate items in the capital improvements program. So those projects already have their own line item, and so walk and wheel are smaller projects that don't include these. We're also supposed to engage the Transportation Advisory Committee and the Planning and Zoning Commission again, and other city groups as necessary in the planning process. We'd want to gather input from England citizens again. And then the final goal in red is the most important one of all, is to develop planning level cost estimates. So for completed projects to date, we have the Broadway mid-block crossing. Clarkson Street was our first bicycle project, which was in conjunction with Cherry Hills Village. We share a border with Cherry Hills, and we were scheduled to do a milling and overlay of that street. And so that was a perfect time to lay down some sharrow markings on that street. Dartmouth Avenue was a project that people had complained long time about. And it was crying out. It really needed some attention, and it took a long time, but we finally got there. And I'll share some information with you later on about that perspective. We've been able to add some additional bicycle parking at Inglewood Station and Oxford Station. The Harvard Gulch Trail was a replacement project of probably a 30-year-old asphalt trail with concrete to match what Denver has, and that trail connects Northwest Inglewood to the Mary Carter Greenway. The Little Dry Creek Trail crossing at South Platte River Drive was identified in a more recent plan that Arapahoe County did, which was the South Platte Connections plan, which looked at all sorts of connections to the South Platte River Mary Carter Greenway, all the way from the Denver County line all the way down to the Douglas County line. There was also the Mary Carter Greenway East Side expansion. So an additional trail segment on the east bank was added from Union Avenue to Oxford. And then we just not too long ago finished up the Oxford Avenue project, which featured some really nice bike lanes from Navajo Windermere to Broadway, and then completing the segment to Clarkson with Sharrows. And then very recently, just a few months ago, we completed the Zuni Street improvements. That was in conjunction with Denver as well. We share a border with Denver. And so you'll see a picture of that later on in the presentation. That the Inglewood segment goes from Evans all the way to Dartmouth. And then finally, Windermere Street and Navajo Streets, that is a continuation of bicycle lanes that were developed in Littleton from, I'm not sure exactly where, far south, but pretty far south, and then up to our border at Bellevue. And those were continued by the city of Inglewood up to, I believe they end at Tufts, and then they transitioned to Sharrow markings to the north all the way to Kenyon. And so here's some pictures of some of the completed projects that we have. On the left here, you see the mid-block crossing on Broadway. That was something that we had worked on for a long time. Took our public works people to Longmont to see their mid-block crossings. But we really got traction on it once this Broadway lofts was going in, and the business community really started to get behind it and really put some pressure on the city to act on that. And in the middle picture, we have, this is Oxford Avenue as you're approaching Broadway from the west looking to the east. And this is kind of the painted markings that we have there to separate the bicyclists from the vehicles, whether they're going straight or turning. And then on the right side, this is the Dartmouth Avenue project as well. And we also have some projects that are in progress. The Public Works Department has gone out and gotten some grants money for the West Dartmouth Avenue project, which is from Zuni to South Platte River Drive. So we can kind of extend our Dartmouth corridor even farther west, looking at 100% design construction. We also have West Floyd Avenue. Once again, Public Works got some grant money to do the segment from Inquis Street to Broadway. And then looking at Old Hampton Avenue, this has just gone out. Public Works has selected a consultant to do some design work for the segment of Old Hampton from Broadway to Lafayette. We're going to get for this project at about 20% design level. And hopefully, we're hoping to use that to go after additional grant funds to complete the project. And I believe also the rail trail pedestrian bridge over Oxford Avenue, that has recently been finished, the design work for it. And the construction, as I understand, will take place later this year. All right, let's turn to outreach. So we started this project I believe in September, so or August, September, in that time period. And so the first thing we did was, hey, we know about this Inglewood Block Party, so we better get our consultants out there. And so the consultants had a booth on Broadway there on September 18th, and they were able to make 50 contacts with people who are interested in learning about the project and giving their feedback. And then we wanted to schedule some joint Planning and Zoning Commission and Transportation Advisory Committee meetings. And those were held September 21st and October 14th. We held a City Council study session on November 22nd. And then we wanted to do a webpage survey to reach out. We have a great communications department these days, and they really know how to get the word out through social media. And that survey went out and was available from November 5th through the 19th. Survey takeaways. This is the consultant's take. Existing bicycle network is not comfortable for most residents. Facilities are not continuous and barriers result in circuitous and high stress routes. Existing network is confusing to navigate due to few wayfinding signs. There's a desire for more bikeway facilities. And generally the thought was from the survey was that the focus should be on improving bicycling and walking within our major activity centers. And so I looked at all of the comments in the survey too, and there was 341, I believe. So that was a really good response rate. And what I took out of it was that I saw a lot of comments that said that Dartmouth is a lot better than it was, but the city needs to keep moving towards separated facilities. And so on the Dartmouth corridor, because there are a few places where there are quite a bit of parking that residents that live on that corridor utilize, we decided that we in order to kind of make this go faster, we should concentrate on kind of a shared parking bicycle lane facility. But it seems to me that people kind of want us to keep moving towards a more separated type of facilities, either removing parking altogether or being able to delineate separate parking spaces, lanes, and separate bicycle lanes. I also saw a lot of comments about share markings in lieu of separated lanes aren't really all that great. People don't really feel that comfortable with them, especially on a busy street. One of the early streets that we did was Clarkson Street, and that is share markings. But and Clarkson Street is kind of one of those in-between streets where it's not an Oxford or a Dartmouth, but it's probably busier than your local Sherman Street. It is something that people kind of like to use as a cut through. And so that's something we need to think about as well. And we also heard that the current condition of Little Dry Creek west of Acoma, that trail is not acceptable. And that's something we've struggled with for many years. This graphic on the left kind of shows you what people are talking about. So down the lower right, you see the green marking, the green line coming in, and that trail is really good up to that point, up to where the plaza area is. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, where am I supposed to go now? So there's not really very good directions there, but the intent was that you would turn to the left and towards the Denny's and cross over that driveway and then around the corner down to the highway and then over to Cherokee, come up Cherokee, cross the light, and then it's a little bit more clear. There's a new path that's very wide that will take you up to the traffic circle, then take you left over to Laddie, and then crossing at the lights up north, up here to where the wall is, and then that former little street behind the wall, you're supposed to take that, and it eventually connects you into the trail, the more formalized trail that gets you over to the Mary Carter Greenway. Yeah, this is something that we've looked at in the past, but we've never really had support from Public Works to really do anything, and it's very expensive. But so that's something we understand. We know that it is out there that we need to look at that, but we're going to have to identify some significant funding to do that. And the other thing that I also came away with in the survey was that there is some apprehension regarding to changes to streets in general, because in this planning exercise, it's really not necessarily has not been identified exactly what the improvements will look like to each street. Some people are kind of worried about that. What are you planning for my street? And what that tells me is that we really need to be careful in these planning endeavors. We really need to have, in many cases, a process where we begin the whole process of designing these streets by reaching out to the public and having community meetings to look at the alternatives and get buy-in before we go ahead and start designing and then actually constructing things. All right, so existing conditions, the planning consultant started off with, after we've identified what we've done, well, then they compiled the astounding project list, and that was compiled from the 2015 Walking Wheel Master Plan, as well as the 2019 South Platte Connection Study and public input. And 53 projects were identified. So the analysis started off, it included 2 levels of screening. The first was the level 1 screening, and level 1 screening looked at overall project cost and ease of implementation. And projects that it is deemed high cost, high complexity projects, those were set aside. So then the remaining projects that were still on the list were then taken through the level 2 screening. And those were divided into tier 1 versus tier 2, with tier 1 projects considered to be the highest priority and easiest to implement. The criteria that was used included some of the following. They looked at connectivity, cost, and demand. With connectivity, some of the measures there are, how does it improve connection to key destinations, and how does it improve access to transit? And a rating system was established, 1 for no change, 2 minor, 3 moderate, 4 substantial. And they went through a subjective exercise with that to kind of rate these things, each corridor, and give it a score. Same with cost, only this time 1 point was given to highest cost projects and 4 points was given to the lowest cost projects. With demand, does the corridor respond to stakeholder input and community input? And does the project fall within the 15-minute city radius? So just a little bit about the 15-minute city radius. That is a fairly new concept that we heard from Councilman Anderson about. And so one of the things we wanted to do was to take things that people wanted to go to, grocery stores or parks, schools, or medical clinics or other shopping activities. And we mapped those all out, and we created these walk sheds and bike sheds, 5-minute, I think it's a 15-minute walk shed and a 5-minute bicycle shed around all those things. And so if a project or a corridor fell within those walk sheds or bike sheds, it got extra points for that. We also rated the project on ease of implementation. Does it have right-of-way impacts? Does it have parking impacts? Does it require multi-agency coordination? We also looked at equity. Does this improve accessibility to underserved areas? Yes or no? And safety and comfort. Does it reduce vehicle pedestrian conflicts? Or does it reduce vehicle bicycle conflicts? Looking at the facility types that we are considering for bicycles, in the upper right-hand corner, we have the traditional striped bicycle lanes. The lower left right corner, this is an example of buffered bicycle lanes, and that's a little bit different because it adds this extra stripe to the left side of the lane, which further gives it more of a cushion for the bicycle rider vis-a-vis the vehicle travel lane. And this street here is our new Zunai Street improvements. And then to the left, we have 2 examples from neighborhood bikeway projects. I'm not quite sure where the left one comes from, where that is. But what that shows is some post and paint bulb outs to narrow the traffic way to slow traffic. And this one here is in Denver, is on the, I believe, the 35th Avenue neighborhood bicycle way. And this is an example of a traffic circle in the intersection. And what that does is to significantly slow vehicle traffic to speeds that will be more compatible with bicyclists and to create more comfort for those bicycle riders. All right, let's talk a little bit about cost estimates. So these cost estimates are per mile costs for these different types of improvements. So the cheapest type of improvement is the traditional striped bicycle lane. Planning cost is about $3,500 per mile, with a design cost of $5,000 per mile, and a construction cost of $41,500 per mile, with a total cost of about $50,000 per mile. Buffered bicycle lanes are a little bit more expensive. There's a little bit more paint involved, and so that cost goes upward to about $75,000 per mile. And then you get into the neighborhood bikeway improvements, and this is much more expensive. These are more physical improvements to a street, and then there's a lot of planning that goes involved with this, because you need to have full-blown master planning community meetings with this to look at the different alternatives and get buy-in. And so planning costs for neighborhood bicycle ways will start at about $49,000 per mile, with design costs at $80,500 per mile, and construction costs of $220,500 per mile, with a total cost of $350,000 per mile. Now, these cost estimates, the consultant has been highly involved with these types of projects in Denver in the last couple of years. And so that's where their experience has come from. And then finally, the shared use path, that's the off-street type of path, like the Mary Carter Greenway. These are, and this has kind of surprised me too, how much this can cost. And so planning costs not too bad, but design cost and construction cost is up to $1 million per mile. So on-street bicycle paths are much more expensive, coming in at over $1.1 million per mile. All right, so they took all of those, they took all the projects and rated them on all those different levels and criteria, and this is what the result was. Our highest performing project is Sherman Street, with a prioritization score of 41. Some other ones that are included here are, and we had to divide these up into different segments because they were going to be too expensive to do the whole thing from Yale to all the way down to Shenango or Bellevue or wherever. So we had to kind of break them up into 3 different segments. And so the Sherman Street segments are all pretty high, 4139. Probably our second most important corridor is the Laddie and Fox Street corridors. And this all makes a lot of sense because we've mostly worked on east-west corridors up until now. We've worked on Dartmouth and Oxford, and we really need to start adding in some north-south corridors to really have a nice connected system. Some other corridors that are included here are Clarkson Street, and as well as the Shenango Avenue corridor. Kenyon Avenue is in there, and and scattered amongst this are some pedestrian type of improvements that are intersection related. So back down here we have South Bannock Street and West Oxford Avenue, which is more of an intersection project that would not only include bicycle improvements, but also by walking and crossing improvements as well. Quincy Avenue and Bates Avenue fall a little bit farther down the list. And we also have Southwest Greenbelt here as well, and Floyd Avenue from Broadway to University. However, that one's a fairly low price project, so we may see it sooner rather than later. And we also have tier 1 wayfinding signage projects identified. So these are pretty easy to implement. You can see to the right, these are pretty low cost, 15,000 to 7,500. So our top priorities for wayfinding were Big Dry Creek, Inglewood Parkway, and Old Hampton Avenue, and the Mary Carter Greenway and Inglewood Station. And just below that, then that's kind of where the dividing line was between tier 1 and tier 2 projects. Projects that fell in the tier 2 were West Union Avenue and South Decatur Street, West Tufts and Broadway intersection, South Federal Boulevard, mid-block south of West Stanford Avenue, and the mid-block crossing of the Broadway at the Gothic Theater. And then below that are a couple of tier 2 wayfinding signage projects as well. So as you see, most projects actually fell in the tier 1. So I think we feel pretty good about them in the fact that they all had a lot of value based on the analysis. And even the tier 2 projects would be valuable. It's just that we can't do all of these things all at once. And so we have to have some priorities. And I think this this analysis has helped us do that. So our top priorities for the Walking Wheel capital budget that I believe that we have are going to be Sherman Street, the Laddie Fox Street corridor. Floyd Avenue is probably going to rise a bit beyond its score just because it's pretty low cost. That's from Broadway to University. And we do have some design work already for that project. And then so we can do some wayfinding projects right away. Big Dry Creek wayfinding, Inglewood Parkway, Little Dry Creek, Old Hampton, and the Inglewood Station, Mary Carter Greenway. So how does the Walking Wheel connect to the comprehensive plan? So I believe that the Walking Wheel update does implement some of our goals and objectives that we find in the comprehensive plan, including goal move 1, which states enhance multimodal mobility and accessibility for all residents through maintenance and improvement of all transportation corridors. With objective move 1.2, develop a timeline and seek funding for implementing complete streets on identified corridors to ensure vehicular, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian mobility. Objective move 1.4, increase bicycle and pedestrian access between neighborhoods and activity centers. And objective move 1.5, ensure access to multimodal transportation networks for all groups with special needs, including the elderly, children, and disabled. And it also implements goal move 2, which states improve environmental quality and safety as it relates to the transportation system. Objective move 2.1 states utilize a variety of traffic calming and speed reduction methods to slow traffic on collector streets and on collector routes and on adversely impacted local residential streets. And that's where that neighborhood bikeways come in. That will definitely help to slow traffic on neighborhood streets through the design of bicycle improvements. And then finally, we have objective move 2.3 and promote use of alternative transportation modes to improve air quality. And that, I believe, and then we have one more. It also implements goal move 3, improve the pedestrian and bicycle environment throughout the city. Objective move 3.1, provide safe and comfortable pedestrian facilities that are ADA compliant to connect public places and encourage pedestrian activity and active daily living. Objective move 3.5, increase the presence and visibility of pedestrian bicycle facilities and connections throughout the city. Objective move 3.6, improve bicycle facilities and infrastructure in strategic locations throughout the city. And finally, objective move 3.7, implement a wayfinding system to improve access to and through the city. And I believe that concludes my presentation. I'm going to stop the share of the screen. And at this time, I would like to open it up to any questions that you may have of me.
Any questions?
Yep, Meg?
Thanks. I was curious about, well, first, this is all very exciting. I'm glad to see these projects planned. My question is about the dedicated funding for capital improvement projects for this plan. Is that, what does that look like? Is it a percentage of funding each year? Is it a flat amount? Will it vary year over year? Or is there dedicated funding, I guess?
Mhm. So at the current capital improvements program looks out, I believe, 4 or 5 years. And it does vary a little bit by year, but it's generally right now in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. And I have to tell you that when those cost estimates came in, and I looked at those costs, and then I looked at the budgets that we have, it actually caused us to rethink things a little bit, in the fact that we were actually looking at very long corridors, such as Sherman Street and Laddie Fox, and they were just going to blow those kinds of budget numbers out of the water. And so we kind of huddled with Public Works and our consultant, and we decided to break them into smaller pieces. But that said, I think that I'm kind of thinking that there's going to be, this has kind of precipitated kind of a need, I believe, to identify some additional funding sources to increase some of these budgets. If we are stuck with the budget numbers we have now, it's going to be a long, hard slog. Now, of course, we have in the past been able to go out and find some additional grant monies, and we will continue to be, I'm sure we'll be continuing to do that. But I think, I'm hoping that there is a realization that these capital improvements programs, they are revised every year or two anyway, and hoping that that now that they have a good handle on these costs, that we can make some adjustments in the funding as well.
Great, thanks.
Any others?
I don't see any
ahead,
other
Liz.
hands at this moment.
John, help me understand what exactly you would like from the commission this evening.
We are looking for a recommendation to City Council to go ahead and approve the walk and wheel update as a supplement to the comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right. If there's no further, I think
Brenda?
Yeah, I just had one question, and this is very small in the whole plan. Is I thought some of the wayfinding was going to get paid for by the downtown authority under their, not a grant, it's their funding that we approved, but just specifically the area around the hospital. Can we get them to pay for that? I guess is my question.
That's a possibility, because a lot of most of these wayfinding projects fall within their borders, and so that's definitely something that could be a possibility. So we would definitely like to probably partner with them. You're correct in the fact that in the fairly immediate future will, maybe not today, but in a year or two, should have a good, nice funding stream from their tax increment financing revenue streams. And as time goes on, they will be more and more flush with funding. At the same time, these are pretty low cost projects as well. So, but it's a possibility that we could be partnering with them in the future.
Carl?
This is going to be really expensive, but if you could join in with some other groups or whatever. What I'm talking about is the Little Dry Creek Trail and extending it from Clarkson clear to the Platte River, which would mean pulling it out of the ground for about a half a mile there where you had the other colored markings on your map. Is there any reasonable talk about that to make that a green belt from clear across town? It would be a nice bike path and a walkability path and a green belt. You got the creek going down through there, and you got to probably be a block wide, maybe green belt. But that would be really nice to have that going clear through the city.
It sure would. But yeah, and there has been some actual investigation of that. When Dan Paremba, the Chief Redevelopment Officer, early on when they started working with the SKB master developer, they were looking at quite a bit of an area beyond where they're looking at now. And they were talking to some different property owners, and they were also doing some investigation of that whole idea of daylighting that Little Dry Creek tunnel. But the costs were very prohibitive to do it. Unless there could be, I'm not sure how we would get there, quite frankly. It was tremendously expensive. Yeah, and I think the chances are pretty low for that, but we will try to. We've talked to one of the consultants, the design consultants, Tribe of Architects, and we've kind of asked them to try to how they can acknowledge the spirit, if not the exact letter of that design. And so how can they come up with a nice greenway that maybe doesn't daylight the creek?
Okay, Meg?
Thanks. I might be in here somewhere and I missed it. But just looking through that spreadsheet that you're sharing of all of the prioritized projects, there are a lot of them. And then in looking at the update on page 26, there's a nice chart that shows kind of the next 10 years, what projects we funded when, but that only covers a small handful of the projects in the full prioritized list. Do you have I mean, I know it all is based on funding, but is there a projected timeline to accomplish all of the tier 1 projects? I know it's a lofty list, but 2/3 of it's not really reflected in the timeline. So just curious about that.
Yes. So yeah, I have not. So I created this chart here. The consultant really didn't do this. I did it. And I felt that once we had the plan and the cost estimates, that we really needed some more information, because it was really going to make people have to figure it out themselves. And I know that our public works department is very stretched today and wouldn't really be able to put a lot of energy into that. So I consulted with I worked with the consultant and also with public works a little bit, and we broke projects down to smaller pieces so that they would fit more closely with what we have budgeted in the next 4 or 5 years on that level. I'm hoping, though, that people in high places that have that budgeting power, such as city council and the city manager, I'm hoping that there's some additional push to increase those budgets so that we can do this faster. This kind of shows you how long and slow that process is going to be. That just these handful of projects that float to the top, that's a 10-year time period, and there's a lot of projects that are still on that list that don't get any attention at all during that 10-year time period. And as I recall, I think all the projects together in that tier 1, boy, it was something like 11 million.
Yeah.
And looking at this, we've gotten to about $2.5 million, and based on that, it's going to be 50 years before you get all that done. My guess is that I'm guessing there's enough support from city council, and there's enough support out there from their constituents that are really wanting to see some of these things happen, that are going to want to see it happen faster. That's really where this whole funding stream came from, is because it was coming too slow, and people want to see more faster. And this is going to show people that more is needed. And this is a good tool right now, but I don't see this as being the final say or final direction. I'm hoping that this is something that is not static. It's not necessarily we have to follow this schedule. It's not a law. It's just a suggested schedule based on what we know today. And I think it's going to be a great tool to help people realize that we need to rethink it a little bit more. And we're going to need to program more dollars sooner so we can get through this. It would be really nice to get through all these projects in about half the time, 5 to 6 years, so we can we can move on to the next group.
Aaron?
Yeah, I have a question, a little bit more detail about pricing. You had showed a slide with 4 different interventions and sort of the cost per mile. And I noticed it didn't quite tie to the actual projects. Like there was the very long project on Sherman was much cheaper than would have been expected if you would have plugged it in for the price per mile of the slide right before it. All this to say, some of the prioritization of these projects were based on cost estimates. How accurate do you feel those cost estimates are? And if you get actual proposals, how would you reprioritize some of these projects if they come in more or less than what's expected?
Sure. So yes, you're correct in the fact that these are sort of, this is not something that we were able to scope out an exact design for, because there's a lot of unknowns in the design, especially when we need to go out and talk to the community and see what will be acceptable and what won't. And so there'll be a lot of design process there that then we'll be able to get to a more, we'll be able to know exactly what we're trying to price, and we can get a lot more closer price estimates. This is really more of a, just kind of getting a handle on it. So there is, I expect that some of these projects could come in quite a bit less. There's also some cost benefits to potentially running some of the planning part of the projects together. So if we were able to get some more dollars up front for planning, and we could run the Sherman Street corridor and the Aladie and Fox corridor with one consulting firm all at the same time, those costs would probably come down quite a bit per mile on a per mile basis. So this is kind of, a lot of these estimates are kind of a magnitude of order kind of costs. And so they're not, yes. And so sometimes, and there's a lot of rounding as well in this involved here too. Sometimes I also question the consultant on some of the costs. And I found out that, well, there's a nuance there where there's a certain section of a corridor where they're proposing a little bit higher, a little bit different facility rather than on-street bicycle lanes. They're looking at a section of like Fox or Laddie Street with off-street dedicated lanes through the city center area. And that kind of bumped up the cost as well. And sometimes that wasn't clear in the chart.
Earl?
A couple of quick ones here. The Oxford station, is there, I guess it would be going through Sheridan, but is there any plan on connecting the Oxford station to the Platte River Trail?
There is, that was studied in the South Platte connection study that was done by Arapahoe County. It would be, I think, so Sheridan will be responsible, of course, from Santa Fe onwards. And I believe that that would be probably mostly an off-street trail. There was also, I can't remember now if there was the other thing that I kind of recall was that there was a possible alternative where that they would remove some of the lanes on Oxford, cut it down to 2 lanes, 1 lane each way with a turn lane in the center, and then you could do some bicycle lanes on the street itself. And then, of course, you have the issue with getting across Santa Fe, and that there's unfortunately, I'm not sure if there's really a great way to do that. Some people in public works have talked about that really the optimal solution to that problem is probably a number of years down the road. We have started, Arapahoe County has recently done the first steps in planning for the Santa Fe corridor for the future. And what we would probably like to see out of future improvements to Santa Fe Drive would be to develop an overpass of Oxford Avenue that would be similar to the Bellevue Avenue overpass. And that would solve a lot of the safety issues that we have today, so that the bicyclists and pedestrians would be able to walk under that underpass and would be able to have a lot of different safety refuges along the way with signals just like you see over at Bellevue Avenue.
One other thing is, I doubt if this would be a factor for Inglewood, but traffic lights for bike lanes and separate lights for cars.
Yes, so there, something related to that is that there is camera technology that has, and I believe that was established on Oxford Avenue, so that there are cameras that are, in addition to the camera for traffic lane, there are dedicated bicycle cameras as well. And if you, and this kind of requires some education, but if you, there's a little marking there at the end of the lane at the intersection. If you put your bicycle there, you will be able to be detected by the camera. So that we do have that technology is available, and we are looking to utilize it when we can. Bicycle signals, separate bicycle signals. Yes, those are prevalent in some of the improvements that have been done in Denver, particularly on streets like Broadway. Yeah, that's something that could be interesting, especially I think with that Little Dry Creek Trail. There's quite a number of crossings of streets there, and that's something to look into, as how could you utilize different kinds of signal technologies so that people don't have to like actually press a button. They can just roll up to the crosswalk and they will detect you, and then they'll give you a bicycle signal that's all your own.
I have a quick question, John. We've recently, as a commission, approved some projects down in the industrial district, Jason Street and that whole area down there. And I think at least 2 of those projects included a requirement that the developer donate money to the rail trail. And just how does that work? Does that money get shifted our original budget for the rail trail? Let's say that the developer is going to replace 100,000 of that. Where does that $100,000 go?
I believe that they have established a separate account in the city that is, it's not going to be commingled into just the general fund. It's going to be put into its own accounting line in its own separate account.
Okay.
So to be saved for that, to be utilized for that in the near future. And also, in addition to the rail trail, there's also the developer for these PUDs across there, Hampton, is also willing to step up to the plate and help us do some of these projects that aren't maybe early projects on our list. Kenyon Avenue is one, and so is a segment of Olathe Fox that they are willing to do. And then we've looked at their plans and made some other suggestions that would help, create some secondary loops off the main trail to better get people going to the right direction towards the Inglewood station as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Well, and in reality, I mean, budget numbers they're not real until it becomes an actual. So, but I was just sort of thinking forward that we are going to have to do our capital improvement recommendations too down the road, not often, not too far out into the future. So anyway. Sure. Any other questions?
Meg?
Yeah, sorry, Michelle, you just made me think of something. Since we do review the capital improvement projects annually, will we be reviewing these as well and the funding for these capital improvement projects, or is it separate and not part of our purview, I guess?
That's a really good question, and I hadn't thought about that. But I would think that I haven't been that too closely involved with your discussions on those in the past, and so maybe some of you who have been veterans could maybe recall some of that, how extensive you got into some of these programs or projects. But that could be interesting. I think it would be in your purview to, if you had something, if you did want to try to advance a certain kind of project within that walk and wheel budget line, that would be kind of interesting there. I don't know how easy, obviously if you wanted something that was, $1 million and it was still only $250,000, it might be hard for us to do, but I don't know. I think right now I would have to say that it's a possibility that you may be able to in the future, depending on what the budgets look like, what kind of line item we have, there could be some leeway to make some choices. And I would sincerely hope that happens. I can't guarantee it, but I'm hoping that some of these budgets are increased, and that then we can make there will be more reasonable and relevant choices to be made.
Well, and I frankly can't remember sometimes what I had for breakfast, so I certainly don't recall a lot of details about the budget, except for we don't have enough money for everything. That happens every year. So,
Yeah.
so that's that's just the reality. So, any other comments or questions? So, Nancy and John, what I need is a motion to favorably recommend this updated walk and wheel.
Not yet, Chair.
Oh, we
I
have,
just-
we have to close the public
Well,
hearing.
first,
Oh,
I
I'm
want to say, for the record, there is no public to testify.
Okay.
And then, yes, we need a motion to
To
close the public hearing.
hearing. Thank you very much. Do I hear a
So
motion?
moved.
Thank you, Aaron. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, we call for the vote?
I
Close the public
can.
hearing?
Yep, Meg.
Yes.
Oh, hold on, I got to switch pages. Kate,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes,
Brenda,
Yes,
Aaron,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now we need a motion to
Now.
recommend.
Okay. Do I hear such a motion?
I was waiting for somebody else to read the whole motion, so I can't do it right, you know? So I make a motion that, and help me out here with the verbiage, that the Walk and Wheels program be added to the comprehensive plan. Is that right? Did I say that right?
So if I, so basically it's a motion to recommend city council approve. And then what you said, walk and wheel plan
Right.
update as part of the comprehensive plan. Does that work?
Okay. Right, thank you.
You bet.
Is that what you need, John?
Yes, Nancy said it really well.
Okay, so now we need a second.
Yes.
Second.
Mhm. Any discussion? The only thing I could say is, this is not really truly discussion, but John, there's obviously an enormous amount of work that you put into this document. So thank you. Thank you for that. This is remarkable. So.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Nancy, can you call for the vote?
Meg,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Carl,
yes,
Brenda,
Yes,
Aaron,
Yes.
and Chair Austin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you again. Okay, according to my agenda, it's I show that the next item on the agenda is staff's choice.
I have nothing further for this evening.
Thank you. Nancy or Victoria? Oh, we do attorney next, sorry.
I would just remind you, I think I mentioned it last meeting, April 25th, there's going to be a joint meeting with City Council and all of the boards and commissions that review the capital improvement projects list. So more information will be coming out on that. So if you could just set aside April 25th at 6 o'clock
Okay,
for that
thank you.
meeting.
That would be an important meeting.
That's all I have.
Okay. So attorney's choice, Victoria?
Hi there. I don't have anything this evening, but thank you.
Commissioner's choice, Carl?
nothing from me.
Okay, Brenda?
I'm good, thank you.
Kate?
Nothing for me.
Meg?
No, I just want to say thanks for sending those training videos today. I'm excited to look at them, which is maybe strange, but thank you. I appreciate it. And that's all.
You're
Aaron?
welcome. I hope you all find them useful.
Aaron?
Nothing to add.
All right, I have nothing. All right, thank you all very much for attending, and a good productive meeting as always, and the meeting stands adjourned.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.